who you help. And so yeah, everybody could give a round of applause for Tiffany. So to kick the session off, would you mind telling us a little bit more about Mogul, what you guys do?
Yeah, sure, of course. Well, thanks so much for having me, and you guys are so awesome for being here. Like, I'm super inspired already that you guys are already working on projects, and I'm super excited to hear about what you're working on, because I always love to use these sessions to essentially really help and provide advice that's actually going to be things you can implement later for your own careers and lives. So that being said, Mogul is the largest female millennial platform in the world, enabling 18 million women each week to connect, share information, and access knowledge from each other. And it's an incredible platform that really is striving towards providing women with information access, economic opportunity, and education. We're backed by major media companies, one of which is Hearst Corporation. All these companies believing that Mogul is the next generation media and technology company for girls and women. And we're globally accessed each day by all 196 countries and 31,000 cities around the world, such that because of our global scale and reach, we've now become a partner to the United Nations, for example, for providing and advancing gender equality and quality education. In fact, we signed a very historic partnership with UN Women, whereby for every $1 Mogul earns, Mogul through UN Women provides a free education to one woman in need. Hence, we'll be providing a free education to over 62 million women around the world.
Wow. Yeah, that's great. Could you tell us a little bit about, like, we're really curious how you came to build Mogul, so kind of your experience in college through starting the organization.
So starting from college, you said?
Or maybe before, if there was like a time in your life where you realized that this is what you want to do and kind of discovered your potential.
So how I discovered that I wanted to do this was I had been in a family that's been for many generations working towards providing information access to the world in different ways, writing magazines, newspapers across Asia, advising different governments and media as well. Many members of my family have worked towards this goal. So ever since I was little, I wanted to follow in my family's footsteps. But what really happened was that I ended up growing up in Paris, France initially. So I'm a US French citizen, for example. Grew up there, came to Texas for high school. Out of nowhere, got uprooted to Plano, Texas. I couldn't speak English very well, but I would learn by watching TV shows and listening to the radio. And listening to Dale Carnegie tapes. Does anyone know who Dale Carnegie is? So I started to see how powerful media could be for learning and education, and I never forgot that experience. And then when I was 14 years old, a very amazing woman in my family passed away in my family, and she had been especially my grandmother actually. She was a really powerful influence for me. And I wanted to be exactly like her, and I made a promise to her that I was going to do everything I could to follow in her footsteps. And I was going to dedicate my life too towards providing information access to the world like she had. And so thereafter, ever since that moment, that's all I've ever worked towards, is this goal since I was 14, since I was your age. Yeah, I think you're older than 14, but what happened was then by age 16, I was applying to college, to Yale, and I said in my essays that one day I would do this. I would start this company for women to empower them, enable them, providing information access. And then same thing, later on, age 21, applied to Harvard Business School and said, yet again, I know I may be the youngest here, but give me a chance. I know I can do this one day, follow in my grandmother's footsteps. And then thereafter, after Yale and Harvard, I ended up working across the media industry, working with Universal Pictures and BBC and HBO, CBS. When I was working in all these media corporations, I was always working towards providing information access, and especially in the latter one. I'm sorry, I'm going to sneeze a bit.
No, please. No worries. Bless you.
Bless you.
It's going to come. No, I'm good, thank you. When I was at CBS, I was working on TV, radio stations, websites, mobile properties, 150 different properties, 29 different US cities. Just traveling a ton, working super hard, getting promoted every few months. It was a great job. I was reporting to the top person there. But at nights I would hustle, and I had 2 more jobs. One of which was with the Vice Mayor of Beijing, was collaborating with him to create a new venture here in the US that could bridge the cultural gaps between US and China at the time. So created a venture with him. And then I had a third job simultaneously, which was producing feature films and documentaries with incredible talents. For example, Gerard Butler, Patricia Arquette, was working with them ultimately on these films to showcase their talents and ultimately highlight different social issues for global awareness. And that's when you can see elements of these three jobs in Mogul today. You can see the innovation at the forefront of content. You can see the bridging of cultural gaps, highlighting of different social issues. So these three jobs were really, really important in my trajectory because it really influenced my later career building Mogul. And it especially influenced me because what happened one day was that I woke up and I checked my phone, and for whatever reason, my phone had exploded with hundreds of emails out of nowhere. I checked it and my inbox was flooded with emails from all around the world from young girls who had happened to read about my three jobs online, who had read and seen that I'd been listed by chance that morning on Forbes 30 Under 30, so they wondered if I could potentially help them get these jobs as well. So I would write them back and write them with like 3-page essays to help them, and they would tell me that my letter had changed their life, that all of a sudden they got that opportunity they never thought would be possible in their society, that all of a sudden they got that interview, that promotion. And so I would just keep on writing back and forth, and all of a sudden it was amounting to thousands of letters. And that's when I realized, instead of all this one-on-one behind the scenes, what if we had a platform whereby millions of us could share our obstacles and struggles and challenges, something I so wished I had had in high school. And then from that, be able to exchange ideas and insights and information amongst each other and become that much better and stronger together. And I had that idea. And so then I remember at that time, you're gonna laugh, but I actually had written a book at that time called From Business Strategy to IT Roadmaps. I'm a huge geek, I know. But basically I was teaching other organizations how to better build out their IT infrastructure to align with their business strategies. And to give you a sense of timing, by this time I was around 25. 25 or 26, I forget, but exactly. But around this time I had written a book, had been inspired by that book, therefore, to realize that maybe I didn't have millions of the dollars at the time to hire a team of engineers, but maybe I could still do this. Like maybe I could still create this solution to help girls around the world that were contacting me. Maybe I could teach myself how to code and do this myself. So every single day I'd work with the heads of CBS, the Vice Mayor of Beijing, with Gerard, Patricia, and then at nights at 3 a.m. I'd be done with everything, and it was my favorite time of the night. I would just clear the kitchen table, teach myself Ruby on Rails, and then after a couple of weeks, I built the first iteration of Mogul. And it was so super simple at the beginning. Could even say it was a little bit ugly, and but it had all the basic functionalities that I really thought could help women's lives around the world. Be able to upload opportunities, information that they saw from around the internet, be able to collectively talk about it so that on a real-time basis, you could see on the homepage what was trending amongst women's conversations all around the world right now, what's on top of women's minds. And then I sent it off to these thousands of young women following me online, and we ended up launching to 1 million users within our first week, becoming the fastest growing platform for women ever. And now subsequently, years later, have become the largest worldwide. So that's where we are.
Amazing.
Thank you.
You mentioned that you were involved in a startup with the Vice Mayor of Beijing. What were some kind of obstacles you might have run into? Because this was your first startup that you were making at the time.
Yeah, I think, that's a good question. So I would say that the biggest challenges in working with the government is that there's more, of course, bureaucracy, more approvals needed. That being said, they were surprisingly, amazingly flexible, especially because I headed up the venture as their head of marketing. So from a marketing standpoint, I had a lot of flexibility in my role, which is really unusual, of course. That's because I had great co-founders. And also another thing that was an obstacle was that we had to build up a huge high-profile initiative, knowing that it was likely going to be a one-year initiative, right? Because it was just going to be a huge way to push China to the forefront as an innovator in the film and entertainment space. it was going to have a huge budget, but it's just a one-time go and done.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, so to build something up to become super high profile, all in one go within the course of months, to then have it become as huge as you anticipated, and then to then be done, I think is a challenge, but it was really well worth it. And yeah, we ended up launching, I think, in like New York Times and Hollywood Reporter, Variety, sorry, the B name, Variety, and then, yeah, like 400 other media outlets, which I was responsible for.
And what was kind of the biggest lesson that you learned? And you were working in marketing, so what was kind of the biggest lesson that you learned there?
That one, so many good lessons from that one, because again, it was like such an amazing experience to be able to see the full packaging of a startup all in one go, and again, be done with it thereafter, so I could really then, go off with Mogul. But, the whole entire project with Beijing encompassed, therefore, all for this one-time thing, staffing up a crew of financiers and marketing people, social media team, IT, everything ready to go that a normal startup would have, one of that with longevity even would have. But again, this would be just a short time frame. So I learned so much in terms of like building a team, being able to hire for a team based on previous collaborators. That became a huge thing for me. I've always worked with the same exact people over and over and over again in my career. All of my media friends, I worked then, in terms of bringing them on the same boards as I am on for nonprofits, or I've ended up crewing my films that I produce with the same people. I've co-written books together with the same people. And then at Mogul, the whole entire leadership team, I had previous relationships and collaborations with at different ventures before then they came on board Mogul. So that definitely, I think, explains a lot of my personality as well. I stay friends with everyone I work with for years and years and years, so that we end up working on so many things together throughout the years.
Mm-hmm. And what would be kind of your piece of advice for to maintain connections? Your biggest piece of advice, how do you make sure that you don't lose these valuable resources?
That's a really good question. You're asking like the best questions I've ever had in an interview. No one's ever asked me these questions.
It was all submitted by these guys.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, you guys are asking the best questions. So, how to stay friends? It's first being present at every moment that you're in, and always trying to over-deliver in that moment. That means that therefore you're building trust in over-delivering in a moment and being present in that moment, right? Because you're really listening to someone by being present in that moment, by over-delivering in that moment, you're also ensuring that everything you do together is always going to be as successful as it can be. So that's why being present is extremely important, and always ensuring that therefore every interaction you have with someone is something that you would be really proud of if it were published on the front page of the New York Times tomorrow. So to be authentically yourself in a way whereby you are kind, you are generous, you are authentic, and you are present and always striving to over-deliver is really key for all your relationships, all your interactions, and to do that over the course of years is important. Another key aspect for me was that I actually did say on purpose earlier that I listened to Dale Carnegie tapes, and that's because actually if you were to Google me or Mogul today, you would probably see that a lot of media outlets often talk about me as being a very calm leader, and that's because of Dale Carnegie. Because when I was learning how to speak English early on, when I was 14, I would listen to all his audio tapes, and his anecdotes always encouraged, not having stress and being very calm. And one of the key anecdotes that I always kept in mind ever since I was in high school, when I heard it to now a decade later, was essentially one in which he said, that I may be repeating it incorrectly, so just take what I say with the overarching theme. But what it was that the most powerful men, of course, unfortunately he talked about men, it wasn't a woman, but the most powerful men, unfortunately, sometimes could be so stressed out that they'd be at the will, they had to bend down to a little white pill to reduce their stress. The most huge, powerful men had to bend down to this pill. But why did it have to be that way when in fact it's somewhat of psychology when you're stressed out? Why couldn't you just remember that in this moment you don't have to be stressed out, you don't have to overwhelm yourself with anxiety. by just remembering one thing, that ask yourself if this moment, this one moment that you're so stressed out over, is going to be important to you 5 years from now. 5 years from now, is this going to impact your whole entire life? The answer is almost always no. And when I was entering college, I remembered asking myself that a lot when a ton of my student friends, my classmates, were stressing out a ton over homework or quizzes or whatever. Of course, I was always studying hard and working really hard and trying to do the best I could, but I always tried to remember the big picture. And anytime I would find myself falling into the trap of anxiety or stress, I would ask myself, like, literally out loud, that question. And then I would, like, totally become calm all of a sudden. And all my friends at Yale used to be like, how are you so calm all the time? Like, how are you so zen? And, you know, and then I became, like, one of the top students still despite that. And then it was like, then they all started reading Dale Carnegie. And yeah, and so now years later, it's still the case. At Mogul, you know, we have a very peaceful environment. No one's ever resigned from Mogul in the past few years. It's still the same, you know, team members, and we've added many, of course, but no one's ever resigned. It's because we have an amazing environment, creating global good, growing like gangbusters, but one in which our culture is amazing and so passionate and very calm.
It's really good advice. Yeah, because like in the moment, it could, you know, everything could seem to be very crazy, and then if you just step back. So when you were growing Mogul, and by the way, guys, if you have any questions whatsoever, feel free to interrupt me. Yeah, that's good. When you were growing Mogul and it was becoming bigger and bigger as time passed on, how did you make sure you picked, you know, good members for your board of directors? How would you pick your team?
The board of advisors, initially, the board. So that's a really good question. So when you think of a business, it's made up of different facets, right? Marketing and distribution, content creation, production, strategy, operations, finance, and so much more, technology, product, etc. So you have to think about every facet. I've always done that since I was little. It's maybe something to share with you too, that like I would always think about, how can I get better at all these facets so that I can know every aspect inside and out, every angle. So even when I was in high school, I was already thinking about it. Things in this way, being like, I want to be great at all these things so I know when it's time to start my business, I'll know everything. And so I'd always find ways to work together with different people, collaborate, so that then I'd be like, okay, thanks to this like Beijing project, now I'm really good at marketing. Thanks to this like content production and film production collaborations, thanks to these things, now I'm really good at content creation and I know how to create viral content. You know, and I always think about it as like ways to enhance my knowledge around different things. So I definitely worked for free for like a ton of my life, right? Always offering my help up for free, in college especially, and then thereafter. But what happened was that therefore, once I started Mogul, again, I was a one-person team at the very beginning, you know, so it's hard to remember that moment because now we have offices all around the world, SF, Paris, New York, we're headquartered in Helena Circle, and we have a office coming soon in Dubai. But at the very beginning, I was a one-person team in my bedroom, working on my bed for 5 months straight. That was the case. I didn't sleep or anything. But therefore, with like $0 in the bank, but million users on the platform, plus more, like how could I bring on expertise? Well, what you can do is you can build relationships with the most amazing people in different industries that have the expertise across these different facets of your business if you don't have the money yet to hire someone. So I basically thought about, okay, who's really great at scaling products or scaling in general, growth? The founder of Match.com. So basically, thanks to a mutual friend, got connected to him, pitched him Mogul. He was the very first person I ever pitched. I definitely don't recommend pitching one of the most important people in the industry as your very first pitch ever. But thank God it was my first pitch, and despite my pitch deck being terrible and me not knowing how a pitch ever even goes, because I didn't even practice beforehand, so his pitch was my first practice pitch. Luckily he said yes, he would come on board as both an investor and advisor. So all of a sudden I had my first board of advisor member, and he was incredible. He knew scaling and understood traction and growth. Next up was you know, the founder of the Knot.com, co-founder of the Knot.com wedding platform. And second pitch ever, he said yes, investor advisor, and then all of a sudden he was on our board. So then, and he's a creative genius, has created so many creative sites, I can't even name them all, but he actually was also, in addition to the co-founder of the Knot.com, chief creative officer of AOL as well, so definitely a huge creative genius and understood the creative side of Mogul, so then came on board, and then all of a sudden was able to bring on board the former chairman of Hearst Magazines, who's like a branding expert, marketing, and then subsequently the COO, now president of BBC, who then, you know, understood operations and finance. So basically every single media titan was saying yes to becoming on our board and represented their expertise. And so therefore I had the expertise of experts, you know, on our board initially. And they were our first initial team members, I'd say.
Yeah.
I have a question.
And, yes.
You said that like your pitch was terrible and all that stuff because it was your first time. Do you know what thing or what fact you told them that led them to say, yes, I want to be a part of this team?
Yeah, that's a good question. So at the very beginning, I said, you know, essentially that, okay, so I'll tell you the mistakes I made. So the mistakes I made were that I had a pitch deck that had a completely black background, which means that no one would want to ever print it, for example, because they don't want to waste ink. Don't ever do that. Like, but basically, you know, I had a terribly designed pitch deck. I didn't show any of our, I had too much data, sorry, is what I want to say. And I didn't really have a clear storyline. So those were my mistakes. So I'll talk about that more. But what I did do right was I showcased at least that we had a ton of traction, and therefore no one could ever say to me that no one needed this, which is a huge danger when you're pitching, is that how are you going to find product market fit? Like, how do you know this concept is actually needed? That was one thing I had over everyone else, and hence why I probably had so many yeses immediately. Because all of a sudden the co-founder of Match.com was like, yeah, I remember when I first founded Match, and it exploded in growth, and we didn't have the funding, so therefore we lost a bunch of users, and if I only had that funding, then we could have continued growing. So because he understood my story and it resonated with him that if I didn't get this funding soon, that maybe I might lose this 1 million plus users, therefore he sent over the money. So I think that really resonated with him. I think with each person I met with, you know, a different aspect of Mogul resonates. So whether it was the traction, whether it was them believing in me as a team member, or lastly, the fact that they're so oriented around our mission, so aligned with it, they would absolutely step on board for that alone even. It was one of those three things, traction and metrics, right, or storyline or team. One of these three things that attracted. So that's what I did right. So what I ended up doing to correct my earlier mistakes was basically redoing my deck, ripping it apart, redoing it so that ultimately I realized the most key thing of all, which is that in life in general, but especially in pitch decks, you want to build buy-in to your deck immediately by making them afraid to miss out. You wanted to have every single slide in the pitch deck be so incredible that that slide alone could have been the whole entire pitch deck, and that would have packed a punch for you enough to have sold them. So that's what I remind my team members all the time when they're doing sales in general, not pitches, but like sales or anything like that. I remember the early lessons of my own pitching and selling, you know, which is that every single slide should pack a punch and create FOMO, fear of missing out. So that's what I did end up doing right. And so therefore, what that means tactically is that I took away all the metrics that I was like putting on one slide, compiling all into one, you know, thing whereby it was like 20 impressive metrics, but it was on one slide, so they'd like just see one and they'd like great, and then they'd move on to the next slide, and then I'd like have lost the momentum that one slide had created. Why not separate it out into like, you know, slides, multiple slides, so that ultimately you're creating this like giant storyline of momentum, growth, like, don't you want to come on? And so that's what I did.
During our prior speaker session, our speaker Reshma Sajani, the founder of Girls Who Code.
She's on our think tank.
Yeah, really?
Mm-hmm.
That's great. She's amazing. And we kind of a question that we got a lot, and also for this session, was what's your secret to being a good boss? So like, how do you keep your employees satisfied? What are your kind of tips for that?
So I use the 3 C's: communicative, collaborative, and celebratory. So for me, it's very authentic to who I am, but so I do this very organically. I don't remind myself of 3 C's, but it ends up being in this way, whereby, communicative, I am literally walking through our floor inside the company all day long, asking, how can I help? What more can I do to support you today? And literally sometimes they'll say X, Y, Z, and I'll literally roll up my sleeves and sit down and shock them as I'm like working, alongside them to do this. And I do this all the time, all day long. My team the company actually didn't even realize how much I do that until it was actually recently my birthday recently.
Oh, yeah, you told us.
Yeah. Yeah, and then it was my birthday, and I was walking around so much that they couldn't even hide the birthday card that they were trying to pass around.
Aww.
It was then that they realized how much I walk around all day helping people. And so it's about collaboration and, so much more. For example, every single Monday we have a structure in place. We have a big, team meeting on Mondays, and then on Wednesdays I meet with each department head so as to always hear about what's their latest struggles and challenges, and we work together all throughout Wednesdays to really hone in on their particular department focuses, and there's just a lot of collaboration therefore introduced across departments, is that we're always communicating about what's happening across each. On the communication front, there's also our weekly wins, for example, as one example that also leads into the celebratory. We have a Friday session whereby by the end of the whole week, we go around the whole entire company with each person saying their latest innovation and win from the week, which tends to become just Friday wins because Mogul has so many wins all throughout the week that by the time it's Friday, they're just saying like that day's wins. But it's an awesome way to hear what everyone's working on. So it kind of leads again to the 3 C's, but ends with a huge celebratory note going into the weekend and drives everyone's passions up for then the next coming week. So it's about communicating, finding every way possible to communicate, introducing structure within the whole week to enhance that, collaborating across the whole board, across the whole company, and introducing structures for that. We also definitely use great collaboration softwares as well, like Slack, of course. I think you guys probably know that. And then, of course, celebrating all the time.
You're also a judge on a TV show, right? TLC
Yes,
TV show,
yeah.
Girl Starter. That's so cool. Can you tell us more about what you do? How it got started? How you got to that position?
Yes, so I'm one of the judges on this TV show premiering on TLC next month. Yeah, it's gonna be fun. Definitely, we're still filming. I mean, we had been filming for the past couple months, and now we have a final segment to film out in SF soon. So that's gonna be fun. I'm judging along some other judges, such as the CEO of Staples and one of the hosts from Telemundo. So it's So I just filmed them, with them, and it's a ton of fun because it's so aligned with our mission. This show, it's essentially like the Shark Tank for girls. So we're judging these incredible aspiring entrepreneurs who are just so awesome, and I definitely champion. You'll see in the show because I'm a huge fan of really hungry entrepreneurs who roll up their sleeves and believe that they're the underdog when they're actually so brilliant, and I just mentor them all the way through.
Are you allowed to talk about the show, like what actually happened?
Yeah, that's where I was since you're live streaming, probably not.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah.
So how did you actually get to be a judge on the show? Were you contacted? How did the show come together?
Yeah, I was contacted by the producers, and they were great fans of Mogul. Had been huge fans and admirers from afar for many years, and so I ended up contacting me, asking me to be a judge.
You also dabbled, well, you more than dabbled, in the movie industry. So I'm just trying to understand how you fit all this into one-page resume, because it's kind of crazy. How did you? What was your experience, and what exactly did you do in the industry?
So my experience actually started all out with like this very serendipitous moment. I was working at HBO at the time, and I remember going to a film premiere. And at the film premiere, it turned out that I bumped into some directors and producers, and they needed some major help on their upcoming film. They like couldn't deal with like one aspect of their movie, and that was distribution, which I happened to be working on at HBO. So I was like, I'll help you. I'll do it for free. So it's my usual style of like, I just want to learn more and more and more as much as possible. And I was super young at the time, really just a few years older than you are. At the time that I got this huge opportunity, they didn't know my age, I think. They must have not known. Because they just like placed this like multi-million-dollar film, into my hands, and I was so young. I didn't know that much about distribution, hence why I would want to learn more. And they were like, yeah, please, like, help like lead the distribution of this film out. So all of a sudden, I remember going to one of my colleagues at HBO and being like, how do we just, because we work in TV, so I was like, I don't know how to distribute a film. Like, what do? Do I call theaters? She was like, I don't know. So basically, I just called up theaters and like made it happen. I just like didn't even know how to do it. But like I just called, and like I even tried to Google, but I like didn't find the answer. So I literally had to just call people and like make it happen. And then all of a sudden the film got theatrical release and distribution and worldwide distribution rollout, and soon was across Netflix and etc. All the EST, electronic sell-through platforms. But that was my first experience ever. And then what was incredible was that then as part of that whole distribution experience, because it had such a successful distribution, it was the reason actually I should even reveal perhaps that it had such difficulty at the beginning was because it actually had a major agency attached to the distribution sale, but for whatever reason that agent was saying that there was no way that this film could sell despite it having been the darling of the festival. It had premiered at Toronto International Film Festival. So this agent was saying it was a no-go on sale, and then all of a sudden I stepped in and like actually did it, even though I had no experience, despite compared to this like veteran of the industry. So then thereafter they made me a producer on the film, and then thereafter from there I ended up leading after the distribution its marketing efforts as well worldwide, and through that we ended up winning the audience award that year from the Gotham Awards, which is like the equivalent of the Oscars for independent film. And so I led all of that and not knowing what I was doing. And then thereafter, that's why all these Hollywood directors and filmmakers started knocking down my door and saying, please, can you produce our film too? So that was how I first started.
Wow. Any questions about for Tiffany at all?
You mentioned how you thought of, I forgot his name, was like Descartes, where you said sometimes if you look down 5 years, you'll think this won't affect me as much. And you said most of the time the answer would be no. Was there ever a time where it was yes and like you just freaked out?
That's a good question. So Dale Carnegie, basically, yes, he did say that question. Ever since this moment, the answer was typically no. It's not going to affect my life 5 years from now. Now, on occasion, leading a company where I am responsible for so many people's payroll, where I do have, a think tank, a board, investors, thousands of people, working with Mogul in some way, millions of users. It is now whereby, on occasion, there are moments where I know my decision does impact a couple of years from now. What could happen? For example, whether we should raise more funding right now despite already being a very highly profitable company. Like, should we be doing that to further accelerate ourselves? The answer could be yes, the answer could be no. There's just pros and cons. It's definitely, that decision I make, it's definitely going to impact some form of future for us. But sometimes I still don't stress out about it, because ultimately I know that by just thinking about it reasonably and calmly, just knowing the pros and cons, that ultimately any decision we make will be a right one. Not the right one, but a right one. Like, it'll have been the right decision for this moment. And you can only worry so much, you know? You can only worry so much that what you're doing is wrong. You just have to count on it being right and operating in that moment, and going on to the next step. So when you lead a business, I think that's when Dale Carnegie's philosophy starts to take a little bit of a dwindle, but otherwise it tends to be really key and works.
Mm-hmm. We had another question from Lauren.
Yeah. So your answer that you just answered, if I may ask, what specific solution did you take? You said that despite it being already like a huge company and rising, should you invest more funding? Which pathway did you choose for that?
Yeah, well, when you're a startup, you can have multiple rounds of funding, right? So ultimately, you know, we've raised millions of dollars from investors at the beginning. Now we're at a juncture whereby we could do it again, which would be one Silicon Valley path, right? The one leading towards unicorn status, because now we've raised our valuation that much more from this next round of funding. And as a result of that, you know, we would be taking on a lot of money that would enable us to hire even more people and accelerate our growth rate. But that's the pro, but then the con is ultimately, you know, that all of a sudden we dilute ourselves, we dilute our previous investors, we potentially can't reward our employees currently on board as much as a result, and maybe we'll start as a mission-oriented company especially, we may end up having to gear our growth towards certain metrics that just aren't aligned with our mission. If we're just here ultimately, for example, to grow into a huge company that ultimately though provides economic opportunity and education, might we therefore in this path of the Silicon path of funding and fundraising accidentally start to prioritize revenue growth too much and profitability too much, so that then we can't give back that profitability towards education, for example. Things like that leads to a whole tree of decisions as well, past the pros and cons. Whereas the other path, it's one of the zebras. That's a new term that's being coined, and that's where it's not about the huge unicorn status, but one of creating a sustainable company that's creating social good, major growth, still major growth representative of a VC-backed company, of which we already are, obviously a VC-backed company, but it's one in which it's sustainable, it's off of a revenue model that works, and it's profitable, and it's creating greater good. I love that idea of zebra. I think that's an incredible path, and that honestly, if we don't raise, we're already there. We're already a zebra then, it sounds like, because we already are sustainable, profitable, using our profits for social good, greater good, and growing at the pace of a VC-backed company. Because we are initially VC-backed, but even if we didn't continue raising more, we'd continue that growth rate, even exceeding those who have raised even more than us. So it's two paths. It will probably end up leading to nearly the same outcomes. And so if we end up going one and try to just ultimately strive towards one outcome, but you know, the path to get there is going to be a lot different. So that's why it's important to think about the journey too, as just as much as the end result. And so in the journey, it's, you know, remembering to be present, over delivering, and just going to the next step.
Mm-hmm. Any other questions?
Okay, so what advice would you give to a person who, particularly like a girl or woman, who wants to start her own startup in, like, I'm saying her, but I'm really referring to myself. Okay, that would want to start a startup like right now or as soon as possible.
Well, I'd start on it right now then.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I would remember, you know, what you're already doing is so incredible. You're already like putting yourself in the sphere of entrepreneurs and mentors and advisors and investors. That's so key what you're doing now. That's exactly what I would advise. I remember myself at this age, like already talking to the best of the best a lot of the people that my own friends had no idea that they could ever get access to, that even 10 years later they don't know how to get access to. But at this stage, I was already doing that. I was already outreaching to the top people in the industry to tell them, I'll do anything for you just to get my foot in the door. Just give me any project, please. I'll collaborate, please. I would love to help you. Literally, I think when I was your age, I actually did do that first with 2 people who are still really dear to me. One was someone I even just talked to a few days ago, and he helped me with a project recently, which was a man named Rob, who was a longtime props master on Saturday Night Live, had worked on there for a very long time, for 25 years, and was also very famous playwright here in New York, and had a lot of Broadway shows and off-Broadway shows. So at the time when I was your age, I actually ended up contacting him, saying what I said before. I'll do anything for you, get my foot in the door, give me any project. He's like, great, yeah, you can become the check-in girl. So I was like, awesome. So at the time, I had just gotten out, and I actually was like, basically, I actually don't think I mentioned this earlier, but I actually did spend a few years at Goldman Sachs and Credit Suisse in investment banking, just like during the time of like college to Harvard Business School, around that time frame. So I did spend some years on Wall Street, but at nights I would moonlight, and I would go to Rob, and I would like work on his Broadway show, and I'd like check in people, and he was so impressed. His team was so impressed with me checking in people in my super duper like Excel sheets, like with everyone's contact information. They had never seen someone so organized, just like RSVPing people and like letting them in. Then all of a sudden he was like, look, we're gonna promote you to like general manager. So then all of a sudden I was like moonlighting, like I was on Wall Street during the day, and then at nights my bosses wouldn't know I was like moonlighting at night on Broadway as general manager of this like new show. And the people on this show I was moonlighting on, you know, they were incredible people. It was being produced by Monica Raymond, who's the star now of the show Chicago Fire with Taylor Kinney and Chicago PD and etc. Like she became a very close friend, therefore became our very first person on the think tank alongside Reshma of Girls Who Code. And all of a sudden, like, so you see how my high school years, you know, and college years led, as a check-in girl, led to major people becoming behind me and advocates and supporters for years later, for 10 years later at Mogul. So, you know, I was already participating and doing things like that, offering help. Another side anecdote was that even around that time, I was offering my help to this one man named Stephen Beer, who had helped to discover Lady Gaga and co-managed Britney Spears. Yeah, and he was like, I was like, I'll do anything. And I was like shaking when I asked him. I was like meeting in a boardroom with him, and he was like, oh, I'm like co-writing some articles right now. Why don't you help me to edit them? And since I'd helped to run our Yale newspaper, I was like, I had done so on the business side though, as a publisher, never on the editing side. But for whatever reason, he was like, oh, just like edit my articles. So I was like, yeah, sure, absolutely. And then I like edited the heck out of these articles. And so then I became like his trusted mentee and protege thereafter. And then that's how I broke into, therefore, like some of the media industry jobs that I got thereafter, thanks to these two like lifting me up and championing me there very early on. So first piece of advice is to offer your help up for free, collaborate with a ton of people so that you continue to build up these early seeds of huge friendships and collaborators. And then the second is to just start to put down your idea that you already have and create the rapid prototype for it, which if it's this organization, it's already happening, so kudos. And then, you know, and start to strengthen it. I read a really inspiring post recently about it from a fellow founder of mine, and she said, you know, that she had a co-founder, we have a founding team, but she had a co-founder, and she said the early co-founder like has the early stage bug where she'll probably end up starting a bunch of businesses, whereas this, my friend, had the burning flame of like wanting to make her organization as awesome as possible. Forever, a long-lasting company that is going to become a visionary company, and that's me. Like, I have the burning flame. Like, I want Mogul to be an everlasting company that is going to be creating visionary products and technologies for women forever after. So if you have to think about yourself, like, do you have the burning flame or do you have the early stage bug? that I think will inform a lot of your next steps as well.
Of course. Thank you.
I saw other hands.
Okay. I have a question more about like the ideas of Mogul. So I'm like starting an initiative about raising awareness for maternity leave and how small it is in America. And like just my question is like, how do you get people to listen? Like there are a lot of problems worldwide relating to women, relating to anyone, and there's a lot to write about, there's a lot to talk about. How do you get someone to like pick up their phone, read that tweet? Like how do you get them to listen and have them think about it?
Well, there's definitely different strategies. What are you doing now in terms of initiatives?
I just ran the idea by her, but like for now I'm researching and I'm really trying to like get people who understand me and who have that passion and believe in what I see, and like just finding dedicated people, and I'm just trying to like honestly raise awareness because I feel it's a problem not a lot of people talk about. But like a lot of other countries are way ahead of us. So I think it's just raising awareness and having people think about that and like spreading it and having them like leave the place and think about it even after you're done talking is what I'm trying to achieve.
Yeah. So hopefully I'm answering your question, but if not, just stop me. So basically, some of the most key ways in which you can, when you have an initiative and a mission in mind and you want people to listen quickly and effectively, it's going to be through a combination of content and partnerships. So I think it's like, from what, like, if I were in your shoes, how would I get the word out as quickly as possible? And so what I mean by that is, I say that for two reasons. First, with Mogul, as an example. When I first started Mogul, and we had the million users, like how did I build it from there to even more? It was by becoming a super user myself and creating content myself on the platform alongside the rest of our users that would really resonate with them on a level of like being this golden nugget of information that they'd never seen before, and that resonated with them so much that they would want to share it. So that was like number one, content. And by that, I'll give you some examples. I wanted to bring in users who were even more users who wanted more jobs, more opportunities, more career, a bigger career trajectory. So I thought, what are these women struggling with the most when they have these ambitions? Actually, it's counterintuitive. If they're that ambitious, they're probably not having that tough of a time in their career. It's actually within their romantic relationships, for example, that they're probably having the most difficulty. Therefore, one of the first posts that I ever wrote as a user was this post that was called "Do not get married until you ask your partner these 15 questions." And "Do not get married" was all caps. And then it went so viral, like 15 million people clicked on it, and it was like that fast of a pickup. So it was like, so it's thinking really with like creative genius, like how are you going to attract your specific audience in a way that is totally unexpected, in a way that will get them to like click through to that post and want to share it with others because you gave them information that was so vital, that was so totally unexpected, and so yeah, everyone was like sharing these 15 questions, the exact users I wanted on Mogul because of this counterintuitive information I was giving them. So content, viral content, strong headline, and then next, partnership. In between is actually product between that. So product, I'll just tell it to you guys though. But basically another reason why we went viral also is because I went, as a junior coder, I went to this website called addthis.com. And on addthis.com, they have a bunch of embeddable widgets that encourage sharing when you embed them on your site. So basically, like anytime someone scrolled down the page, it'd pop up with a widget and like encourage them to share more and share more. And so I would embed this from addthis.com, but I don't think that's as relevant to this. And then the third thing though I did was partnerships and press. So I would like highlight our mission to everyone who would listen to me. One of the biggest things I ever read in an article sounds so small and like silly, but it totally changed me, and I totally did it all the time. The article was talking about how unless you ask for it, unless you say it, like, no one's ever gonna know. So just in every conversation you have, just bring up what it is that you need right now. You just never know what the other person is gonna say in terms of the resources they're gonna offer or their connections. So every single conversation, I would just always like highlight our mission. And in the early days of Mogul, actually, I would even say for the first 2-3 years, everyone was always like telling me at least 4 people they wanted me to connect with. Thereafter, huge people, press people they wanted me to talk to, their friends, their family, like that were really high up, like potential investors. Every single conversation, there would like arise like 10 people I needed to talk to, and I would talk to all of them. I never left a stone unturned at the beginning, especially like I did everything that people said I should do in terms of the people they would wanted me to connect to after. So in terms of partnerships, what arose is that I ended up partnering with a lot of brands, connecting with the heads of marketing through LinkedIn to see if, you know, their missions align with our missions, and could they like spread this to their email list serve, or could they put this on their platform for free as part of the partnership. And I would create FOMO, because I would try to get someone to just say yes. They didn't even have to say yes. We could just like give them everything. They don't even have to do anything. But I get someone to say, yeah, we'll be your partner at least, even if they don't do anything. So that starts to become your anchor for some big name on your list of partners that then you can take to the next partner, maybe a lower tier organization, and you say, you know what, like, if you just send it out to like 100,000 people, and then you can be on our list of partners. And then because the bigger of their competitors is on that list already, they'll be like, yeah. So all of a sudden, so that's how you use FOMO to like build out your partnerships and spread the word through their own user base and constituents. So content and partnerships.
Okay, thank you.
It's really interesting. We have 2 more minutes left, so we could have one more question. Nana.
When you were talking about the like how you started like in the film industry and like whatever, and you said that you offered your help for free, just like, oh, can I like do anything for free? How do you know who to contact?
That's a good question. So at the very beginning, I literally knew no one. I was lucky in that I had a girlfriend of mine at Yale. She's a friend of mine who happened to be related to both Steven and Rob. And so that was a very lucky streak of mine. But honestly, I didn't contact her for a very long time. She was my friend for years, and I didn't even think to ask her. But it was only like out of desperation of like, I really, really want to do more media. How much more can I do so that I can continue to fulfill this promise to my grandmother? Like, how can I do it? That's when I looked around at who I currently knew, and that was so limited. I only had my Yale friends, and she was the only one that had some family members in the media space. Everyone else seemed to have parents who were doctors or lawyers, and I was like, I didn't know anyone with media connections but her. And I asked her, and thank goodness she was such a good friend. She said, absolutely, you know, meet Rob and Steve. And so I talked to them, and that created the first part of the first web that became eventually my circle of friends. But that's how I started. And I remember emailing Lizzie, was her name, and actually it was a Facebook message. I remember being like, you know, I'm like, you know how much I love media, and I just don't know anyone. Like, is it possible to meet with your your 2 people so that ultimately I can work for them in some way, intern for them, do any sort of project for them, collaborate? And she connected me first. Now, afterwards, what I did was a little bit more systematic. And you guys are so much more sophisticated than I was then. Like, I was like not very precocious. I think around this time I was like, social media was just emerging at this time after all. So then as I became more sophisticated, though, it became more of like, okay, I want to get to know these people in these industries. I think they're incredible. I would literally, if I didn't know a warm connection to them, like if I didn't have a mutual friend who could ping them for me to hype, you know, up myself or Mogul or whatever, so that then they would CC me into it and I could just like continue the conversation from there. If I didn't have that warm connection, then I would do a cold email. And I established a template for my cold email that was something I still use to this day, which is that, you know, my cold email is like, basically saying very authentically like how much I think they're so incredible with these particular achievements, why I admire them so much. And I would really just, I think that, okay, here's what I do, but I would love to really hear more about your latest initiatives and what you're working on, and seeing if there may be ways in which I could collaborate with you or help you in any way possible, because I just want to support as much as I can and learn from you and help you. And it's like that flip of it that really helps. One in which you're showcasing that you just want to help them. You're not here to help yourself. You're offering your help already in the email, and you would love to, get tea with them for even just 5 minutes, or just speak on the phone for 5 minutes, and then, which of course turns into much longer. And then like, you just don't want to give any opportunity for someone to say no. And if already you're so kind in your email, you're offering your help in the email, and it's taking none of their time, you're gonna get a yes. And if for the few no's that you're gonna get so many yeses. So just keep on emailing until you have who you want.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned earlier on that press is a big factor of letting people know. And so just as an amazing announcement, we're going to the New York Times in June. So, and a few selective leaders will be asked to kind of present in front of the New York Times and get featured there. So maybe that's something, that could help you or people who are doing projects like that. So yeah, thank you so much.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, thank you very much.
I hope that was helpful.
That was very
Thank you.
helpful.
That was awesome.
Yeah, great, wow. It's great. I did not run out of questions. Yeah, great questions, you guys.
Well, feel free to contact me at any time, and I'm excited that we all got together. And
Thank you.
Yeah, definitely.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Would you be able to take selfies with a few of us?
Yeah,
If you have any
of course.
time?
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, thank you so much.
first, you guys take a picture.
Yes.
Yeah, awesome.
Thank you so much.
I'll
Where would you
take
like
one
us to
on your phone too.
Okay.